Thank you guys for coming up. This session is building mobile applications using Azure Mobile Services with Xamarin. You could use Azure Mobile Services in many different ways besides Xamarin. This session focuses in on Xamarin. My name is Fabian Williams. I'm a solutions developer, database administrator, systems engineer. I work for a company called Planet Technologies that is in the DC metro area in the States. I work on their federal team. My blog on the fabiangwilliams.com, if you go to my blog, it's typically BCS stuff, it's typically workflow stuff, as of lately a lot of hybrid stuff, and also mobile services stuff as well. My LinkedIn is here, and connect with me if you want at that location. My email is here, and this email, feel free to use it. I tell everyone that come to my sessions, email me all your questions that you want, I will answer it. I usually qualify it by saying that, just like you have daytime jobs, so if I don't get back to you immediately, doesn't mean I'm ignoring you. Just give me a couple of days. I usually will tell you, I'm heads down, hit me on the weekend. What I will tell you also is, I've had this happen to me before. People say, hey, here's my project. Can you do it for me? That's not going to happen, all right? So unless you're willing to share the charge code, or like Ted, buy me beer, that's not going to happen. I just got recently renewed as an MVP for SharePoint in April. And that's it for me. I want to make sure that as we walk out of here, we have met some objectives, even though albeit 50 minutes and 10 minutes of questions. So I want to make sure that you understand and identify the different technologies that come in Azure Mobile Services with or without Xamarin, as I mentioned before. Even though I'm going to speak specifically to Xamarin, there's a lot more that you can be doing. However, we are going to dissect the anatomy of an Azure Mobile Services. I'm just going to use the word WAMS from now on. It's Window Azure Mobile Services. Just helps me to go faster. Looking at the database layer, which is the backend system. We're going to look at the web service layer, which is the web API that basically fronts the information. And we're going to be looking at the mobile client. We're going to dissect that. Then we're going to look at dissecting an end-to-end WAMS solution using Xamarin and the application lifecycle management, all right, with GitHub. Reason why I want to pull this inside here is because it took me a little while to find a good way to work with Xamarin. Mark, you lift up your laptop for a minute? So I have one of these as well. I run Parallels. Exactly. I have a Mac. I run Parallels so that I can have a Windows side. The reason why that's important is as we get closer into this, Xamarin is leveraging your C# skills to become a mobile developer. All right? When you go to Azure Mobile Services and pull down a solution, it's a Visual Studio solution. Visual Studio does not run on Mac. Right? However, to do iOS development, guess what you need? A Mac. So I use GitHub to create my repos so that I can work with the same code base between two different worlds. So I basically do push and pull for my application lifecycle management, and I want to speak about that because I found it very difficult to make it work, and this was just one good way to make it work. Some people actually, they put it inside SkyDrive and have it sync. That's certainly one way of doing it as well. Then we're going to do an intro to Xamarin.Forms, time permitting. I really want to do the Xamarin.Forms one because as much as I'm going to show you about the first part, this is going to blow your mind. And I want to make sure you leave here, your minds are completely blown. Next thing I want to show you, this is what I said before, but I wanted to re-emphasize it and leave it here on the slide. We are covering a lot of information. I've done this, when I knew I was going to do this session, because Steve told me last year, I test fired it in January at a SharePoint Saturday in Virginia Beach, and I said, give me your feedback. They said, you know what? Too much information, too fast. And if you don't know some things, you're going to be lost. So that's when I re-architected this in a certain way to make sure that no one will get lost, and you're all going to leave with content. And when you go back home, you're going to have all the information you need. So we're going to cover Azure fundamentals. So if you've never touched Azure before, we're going to touch a little bit of that. We are going to be looking within Azure at Windows Azure Mobile Services. We have to look at database design and administration because that's the back end. We're not going to spend a lot of time there, but you have to at least look at it and understand how it works. We are going to be looking at Xamarin.iOS, and when we talk about Xamarin, I know you know the big pitch is that you can create cross-platform application. My first one is not cross-platform because using Xamarin inside WAMS, it pulls down a single-page application for that solution. So I want to show you how to use that one because that's what you're going to start with. You have to know C#, or it helps if you know C#. We're going to talk about ALM, and then Xamarin.Forms is what's going to blow your mind. That's truly, truly cross-platform. However, there is no GUI for it. you have to write everything in code. So it's either XAML or C# as opposed to the Xamarin iOS where you can storyboard. That's why I wanted to show you the differences. So we can never cover this in 1 hour. So I've done this for you at the bottom. All my code is on GitHub. It is public for you to pull it down, as I told some of the guys in here before. You can pull it down, clone it, press F5, and it will work. All you may have to do is get your, you know what, I won't even do that. I'll leave it the way it is so you can press F5 and it's going to work. The point that I'm going to make is that it's going to hit my tenant, right? So because it's going to be my URI, my key. I'll leave it up for a week, but after a week I'm pulling it down. Because, all right, so, but if you take it out and put your URI, your key, it then will work for you on your tenant, right? I have sample videos on YouTube for the bits that I know are very, very detailed and laborious or challenging, so that's out there. And I have a 4-part blog series that speaks about this in great detail. This is going to be up later, and you're going to have access to this slide. You don't need to take a picture of it. But these are all of the things. These are the repo, the blog series, the forms intro, and my YouTube channel. All right. So this is sorry?
Really quick one. Why don't you use Xamarin Studio?
I do.
You do?
Yeah. So and all right, fine. Let's hijack this right now. So we're gonna say that I use Xamarin Studio specifically for some things. While I can use Visual Studio for everything, because it does provide support for Xamarin, I find that, especially for the Xamarin.iOS piece of it, the interface inside Xamarin Studio is cleaner than in Visual Studio. Visual Studio is a great IDE, I love it, but it's too busy trying to do the Xamarin stuff and the Visual Studio stuff. So for the single page applications for iOS, I pull my mobile piece down on the Visual Studio side and I work there for that piece. Then I switch over to Xamarin Studio and I do the storyboards on that piece. So yeah, but it's a mixed bag. And this great question that allows me to set up later, but good question. So this is what we're going to be covering for the session flow. What is WAMS, exploring WAMS, anatomy for WAMS, you guys see it right here. We're going to try and get through all of this. I'm going to try and put a lot of demo inside there as well. However, there's a lot of slide because when you take this home, you're going to forget the demo. And I want to make sure we have some stuff here as well. So, and again, I am Jamaican. I speak extremely fast. So if I'm speaking too fast and it's going over, raise your hand, tell me to slow down. But remember, we got 50 minutes. So in terms of mobile services, working from your left to right, we have the ability to create Windows Store application, iOS, Android application. You can even create what Cordova does, which is basically HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS. And then you have tools like Xamarin. When working with Azure Mobile Services, you get a mobile services namespace that also allows for offline syncing. And you offline sync to SQLite Store or to any other medium, but I use SQLite Store in mine. Benefit there is that you can have stuff, you can work with data inside Azure SQL, obviously, but you can persist that data to the device, so even if in an offline mode, they still have access to that data. The data, even though I'm here preaching SQL Azure, it can be anything. It can be SQL Server, as well as SQL Azure. It can be table storage, Blob, MongoDB, and my favorite, if you don't know right now, I am a lover of hybrid. It can even be a hybrid connection. So the hybrid connection does use BizTalk services to make that hook into your on-premises environment, but it is available to you as well. The biggest kicker for me, and I think what the biggest win is the next piece, the user authentication piece. Identity is key when working in this space because you need to know who is behind that device. And having the ability to use not only Azure Active Directory, which ties back into your tenancy, so you can control that. You also have a lot of social logins. The solution that I built for this session uses Twitter, but this could be Facebook, it could be Google, your Live ID, as the ability to authenticate into the system. And you'd be surprised how easy it is to do that. Certainly there's push notification as well, and all of these are supported. In my solution here today, I did not or will not cover push notifications for a couple reasons. One, I would have to scale my solution from the size it is to support push notifications, and also it would have cost me an armload of money to make it work over here as well as in the States. So I speak to it, but I don't have it working. Job scheduling, really, really key. What I'm using this for in this scenario, but think about, you can extend this beyond that, is, by the way, you guys know, if you don't know, I'll tell you right now, there's an application called Tweet for Swag, which is the foundation of this course. And the idea is that you will tweet and you will win swag. So the job scheduler basically checks for tweets with certain things that I have keyed into Azure Mobile Services in the database backend, because when you tweet on it, it's going to hit my mobile services, it's going to take some information and tweet that as well. And the job scheduler basically goes out to Twitter, get all that information, and then uses a randomizer to pick a winner. All right, you'll see it work. But this could be anything. You could be looking at your own application in terms of just usage and making decisions on that. You could be using it to do back-end processes. It could be a web role or worker role or whatever. But the job scheduler is something that can either work at intervals or work pretty much close to real time in terms of just checking for things that's happening as your mobile applications are being used. Also, I want to just jump aside one more time again. Ask questions as I'm speaking, interrupt me, and ask them real time. Don't wait until the end. That'll allow me to answer questions as we go as well, and for me to know that you're understanding what I'm talking as I'm going through. So these are all of the things that I just mentioned before that are available to you. I won't go over them. I just want to leave them as bullet points so that you can look at that later on as well. But if you've never, and we're going to look in the real website, this is just another takeaway that with just refined points. Because this is Azure Mobile Services, you would log into Azure at manage.windowsazure.com. On the left-hand side, you click on Mobile Services, and these are all the available options. So if you don't want to do Xamarin, you can certainly do a Windows, you can certainly do iOS, Android, HTML5, or JavaScript. For each one of these that you click, you get a sample to-do app code. And that code will be pulled down, and you can extend that code. Indeed, the Tweet for Swag is basically an extension of the to-do application. My Forms one is starting off from scratch, but I wanted to show you how you could actually take something, extend it, and own it and make it your own. So let's explore the facets of WAMS. The first, the top layer that you see right there is a dashboard that you get once you click into Azure Mobile Services. So right off the bat, you get a great dashboard that gives you a bunch of key metrics as to how your application is performing, and you can make, you can use this information to also scale up or scale down your Azure Mobile Services. Let's say that you're getting really slammed because you're launching a product, and you're getting a lot of traffic, and you use a smaller amount of SQL Server, a smaller amount of compute cycles for this. You can scale it up based on these metrics. So that's there for you. The scheduler, as I mentioned before, is a solution inside the Visual Studio solution that comes down with you that you're going to push back up. And when you push it back up, it becomes available here. And as you can see, it says it's enabled under status. And on the frequency, you see it's running every 5 minutes, right? So this is what you get in terms of just having that done. For me, what I did as well, as part of, and we will see the solution, we will look at it together, I have my scheduler also writing to the logs, but just to show you features. It could be doing anything, but I wanted to show you logs also and how you can write information back so that even if you didn't want to go and look inside your source code to see what's going on, you can log information out in Azure Mobile Services, log in, and see exactly what's going on. So and you can write back whatever you want. Let's see. So this is the information that I'm actually collecting. In fact, if you tweet right now, tweet the number 4 and swag, it's going to get picked up. You guys know the NSA is really good at scooping up information back where I live. I'm good at it too. So, so it's going out there, it's polling Twitter, and it's looking at every 5 minutes, and it's pulling out this information. And some of these people are actually in the room right here. This gentleman right here is the one in the front row here, and you can see me there. It's indiscriminate. It's just looking for key terms when you tweet stuff out. As terms of push notifications, as I mentioned, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it's full fidelity. So if you are targeting specific platforms, whatever those native platform push notification mechanisms are, Windows Azure Mobile Services has the ability to take either the key, the consumer key, and the client key, and work with it. And it will just it'll use a messaging hub or Google Play or Windows Push to make that work for you. In terms of identity management, this, as I said, I love this piece right here. This works with almost everything that you would want. Microsoft accounts, as you can clearly see here. Facebook, and this is all that you need. I think the reason why I put this inside the slide is just to show you how simple this is. For this bit at the bottom here, which is partially marked out, obviously, all I had to do was go to api.twitter.com, create a new application, tell it generate keys, put the keys here, and then in a few places, in my web.config file, and 2 other places, I'll actually call them out and show them to you, drop the information there as well, boom, I now have Twitter authentication working. All right, I'll show you where that is. But it's that simple, all right? Previously, you had to be writing your own providers to make this work. No longer anymore. Microsoft's taking care of that for you. Obviously, as I mentioned, there's Google, and there's also integration into your Azure Active Directory, which, as you know, this is probably the one that Microsoft is talking about most, because the belief here is that, let's say that you have an on-premises environment that you extend out with ADFS, that you tie back into your Windows Azure Active Directory. Guess what now? You have authentication all the way back. You have a federated user that can go even all the way back to your on-premises system that can use an Azure Mobile Services to work. And you can also be quite discerning with it, because you can actually have multiple. I just have one right here. But let's say that you have one application that if people logged in using their Windows account, it knows that they belong to the company. If they log in using a social account, you know that they don't belong to the company. Same app. But you have it's feature rich, so that people who work for your company have more information or can act on more information than people who don't. So it's providing you the flexibility here. Question? Oh. In terms of configure, it is what it is. It's basically allowing you to scale up your database, manage your SQL Server. It's part of the application lifecycle management. And by the way, even though I am biased to GitHub, I'm biased to Git using GitHub, this also ties into Visual Studio Online. So you could be using Visual Studio Online as well, using TFS, or also Git on TFS. On Windows, on Visual Studio Online. So I may be using Git, but you could certainly use Visual Studio Online as well, and do continual integration. So the entire process, application lifecycle process, is built into that. Also, it provides for remote debugging and also hybrid connection, which, as I say, I love hybrid. Next thing I want to talk about is it does provide for cross-origin resource sharing and also developer analysis, and these are where your connection strings are also going to be located. So if you are going to be doing something other than SQL Server, let's say that you're going to be doing a MongoDB, or you're going to be doing a hybrid or some type of custom connection as your data store, it'll be inside here as well. So you'd obviously need to have some type of connection string to connect back to it. You basically configure that here. Which is what this is telling you right here. And these are your options, SQL Server, SQL Azure, MySQL, and custom. Now, in terms of the anatomy of the WAMS solution, when you go to Azure Mobile Services and say that you want to create a new one, and it gives you your sample code and you pull it down, it's a zip file, and you explode the zip file and you put it somewhere, this is what you're going to get. Is it right? Yep, this is exactly what you're going to get. This is before I actually extended it. I want to make sure. So you get, it's a to-do service, and under data objects, you have a to-do item, which is just basically your entity class. You have a controller. It's basically following your MVC pattern. So you have your model view and your controller. Your controller has all of the CRUD operations, the create, read, update, delete operations that you need to write back to your data store based on your entity type. And inside the web API config, it comes seeded with 2 objects, to do 1 and to do 2, basically. So that's what you have on the second part of this solution here, where it says Bravo Service. So this right here is the Azure Mobile Services, which is the web API. In fact, it's nothing more than a glorified web API. If you go to an ASP.NET application and say you want a web API, it's basically it here without the views. All right? In the top bit, that is the client piece of it. So this client piece now is where I said before that the Tweet for Swag application is a iOS single page application. It's because it gives me that by default, and I just ran with it. All right? So this is what I'm going to actually extend. Something that I didn't plan to talk about, but let me just interject it for a couple seconds, is that there's a couple different ways to create a Windows Azure Mobile Service solution. One is by going to the Azure portal and doing it and getting this bit. The other piece is by opening up Visual Studio and as one of your templates, choosing Azure under Cloud. Is it Cloud or Mobile? One of those two, I can't remember. As you say you want a Windows Azure Mobile solution. And it asks you all the information about your tenancy and stuff. You can either fill it out then or skip it, but before you can publish it, you need to have a publishing profile to tie back into Azure to be able to create this website. But if you do it the Visual Studio way, you get the bottom bit here, which is your service bit, but you do not get the top bit, which is the client piece of it, which may be a good thing, because this is already making a decision for you of this is what the client is, use it. Whereas if you do it the Visual Studio way, you can now determine whether you want a master detail, a tabbed application, a whatever application to fit with your solution. This one's already pre-wired for this piece. So that's the one thing I want to call out. And this is just showing you basically, this is a to-do items class. And by default, you get text and complete. So it's a to-do application, so you give it a title of what you're doing and the Boolean field whether I'm done or not done. I extended this to add a bunch of this information inside here just to extend the application to make it work. All right? And this is just a client piece of it that is inside the mobile client. So let's take a look at it in real time now. I did not spin back up my Visual Studio. Hold on. Visual Studio. Any questions so far while this spins up? This all makes sense to everyone? Everyone's locked in? Good to go. All right. Come on, Visual Studio. All righty. Should have preloaded this, but I totally forgot. I had to reboot my computer because I'm on camera and I'm on video. Don't worry. I'll tell you afterwards. All right, so let's go to the tweet for swag. All right, so this is basically the application that that we're working with. In fact, while that's happening, let me also open this up and work on this bit. So by default, whenever you create an Azure Mobile Services solution, the mobile piece of it is basically a code-first entity framework solution as well, right? So the database does not exist as yet. All right. As soon as what am I looking for? The data context. As soon as the data context is instantiated, it makes that call to the server, and then the tables get spun up. And then after the tables get spun up, as I said, in my web API config, I have seeded application in my DB set. It creates the table. It creates items inside a table. So on first call, it takes a little bit longer for this app because it is creating the tables and it's creating the data that I want to seed. So the T4S that you see right here, this guy here, let me just redo it here real quick. Execute so you can see, oh, what's going on here? Oh, did I not get everything? There we go. All right. So this is all that's inside there now on the Windows Azure bit piece of it, and it is corresponding to these guys right here. All right. Because it is code first, and because I'm also using, I decorate it with migration history. If I change, which is also very useful to know, it is a scaled down version of SQL Server. So I can modify my entity by adding columns, and it will pick it up and push it up into SQL Azure. When it does that, it blows away the data, obviously, and puts it back up inside there. I can't remove columns, but I can always add, and I can always extend to it. So that's just some good gotchas that you should know. This updates table that you see as well here, this is the scheduler table. So when if I do all from T4S.updates, this basically is all the tweets that that are out there. Let me do one thing. Order by date. DESC. Is that going to work, Rapper? Let me see. Right. Today's the 21st, right? Yeah, all right, so this is all that's happening right now. So I don't know if any of you guys are tweeting, but if you were, every 5 minutes, it'll actually capture some stuff inside here as well. So these are the tail that are involved. In terms of, let's go back over to Visual Studio real quickly. This is basically the solution that you're working with. And just to call out a couple of things inside here, as I mentioned before, to this gentleman's point, this Tweet for Swag mobile application, I do not mess with it inside this world, even though I could. I work with the top bit, which is the ASP.NET Web API that is part of Azure Mobile Services. So that's where I work, and I spend most of my time. I'm not going to go through it. I know I'm running short on time right now, and the code is out there, and it's not really a code session, but this is just to dissect it for you, to show you a couple of things that I didn't have. The schedule job, I didn't really have it inside my slide deck. Basically, as you can see here, this is where the Twitter token comes into play, but more so, you could be writing, I'm making my link query to Twitter right here, returning all of the updates. And I'm also filtering, removing retweets, and looking for EvoConf or Tweet for Swag or Fabian Williams. So any patterns that match this is scraping and pulling inside that updates table. So as I mentioned, it's just a web job though that implements the scheduler, move over here. The schedule job base class. And as I mentioned before, it is seeded with some information. Just to start the bit off, I have a couple sessions that I'm doing in Ignite already preloaded. Besides that, there's nothing too big about it. If you've done ASP.NET before and done Entity Framework, this is all that this is. It's just an MVC object. All right. What else did I want to talk about inside my demo? The SQL part and that part, which is good. One other thing before we leave. The beauty about this as well is that, let me just Google Chrome it here for a minute. Because it is a web API template, you basically can debug it locally, and it'll create a table running inside IIS Express, as you can see right here. And when it loads up, it tells you, hey, everything is working. But the beauty of this right here is that you can try it out right here, real time. Now, granted, this is not hitting my Azure yet. This is hitting local. So it's basically gonna have the ones that are seeded. So if we go to the tweet item here, it gives you as well a schema of everything that's inside there. And you say try it out. And you do send. I didn't test this before here, so doing stuff live, you never know. But I think it should come back. Hopefully, it'll come back. It's creating a table and stuff. There you go. Here's all the items coming back that I seeded. So for your full CRUD operations, it gives you the schema and all of the cookies and the headers information, and you populate it, and it gives you back your information. So you don't have to publish your information inside Azure before testing it to see that it is working. That's a nifty feature that they have that I really, really enjoy. Exit. Start building, yes. All right. So with that out of the way, let's come back over to the slides and start working through some other stuff. So from current slide. So the next thing is, now that we've looked at the back-end piece of it. This is now we're jumping into the Xamarin bit, right? So if you were working with mobile before, this is the traditional paradigm that you live in. You're working in iOS, you need to learn Objective-C, Xcode, now Swift. You're working in Android, you're working in Java and Eclipse. And by the way, just an aside, if you go to Microsoft Virtual Academy, MVA, right, Todd? Right, Ted? MVA. You and Scott have a Xamarin session on MVA using Android application, right? Absolutely. Exactly. So if you want to learn more about that, go to MVA and Microsoft Virtual Academy, and you can actually see an example of the middle bit using Xamarin. That's focused on Android. And you can also be doing C# inside Visual Studio. So this is a traditional model. However, you have platforms out there like Cordova, Sencha, And they basically provide solutions that sit on top of, using HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript to create an abstracted layer that can also work as a mobile application and present it to users. And you'll normally see this on iPads and iPhones and Windows Surfaces and Windows devices. But basically, it's a website sitting on top of a mobile device, in my opinion. Let me just qualify, in my opinion. Because what you don't get is, and the bias that I have written inside my soapbox here, as you read my soapbox, is that when you go out there and purchase your Android, or in my case, nice on iPhone 6, these are expensive items, right? They're quite costly. And you purchase them because you want the experience of that phone. If you build native, you are building to that experience. If you're using these tools like HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript, you are not touching the hardware. You're touching an API calling to the hardware. And some people will argue me with the nuances of, I'm going to the API to get to it. I don't think it's full fidelity. One, it's cheating on performance, and two, it's not fully native. If you're using Xamarin, however, what you have is a shared backend written inside C# that can be built across Android, iOS, and Windows, right? So that's what you get right there. So if you're all C# developers in here, or no C#, you too can start doing this. I picked this up in November. I didn't do mobile development before. I didn't even write anything mobile. And now I've written a Forms application and an iOS application that is inside the App Store. And that's fully functional. So let's look at the client bit of it right now. So for this piece, as I mentioned before, I'm going to jump over here to the Mac side of my computer. So the T4S that you saw, remember those two solutions? This is the client piece of it. And inside here, let me open up the storyboard for iPhone, which is going to take a little bit of time. Basically, I use the storyboard feature inside this designer to come up with, let me just scale this down a little bit, as best as I can here, and move this over a little bit here. This middle piece that you see here, this view controller, this is the one that comes with the mobile services solution. I basically added another view controller, a navigation view controller, put it ahead of it, changed the SKU to start with that one and start pointing forward so that I can actually drive it into the solution. But this is my early days of learning mobile development. And I used the SKUs to basically navigate and do pushes from one to the other with directionals back and forth, using my hand to drop objects onto the design pane and then using the code behind to write my methods to make that work. This is when I just started out. This, by the way, I would never do this again. The reason why is because it's so new. You would think that when you drag something on the pane and you align it properly and it looks properly, it is going to render that way. No, it does not. I did not know that, right? So when I go to a couple more slides, you'll see that I got rejected from the App Store several times only because they said this does not line up properly. And they don't even reject it and be kind about it. Failed, blah, 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 blah. Fix your stuff. And there's a part of it actually that says don't badmouth Apple, otherwise, they didn't say they won't take your app back. And they say, badmouthing does not help you as a part of it as well. So they're very, very specific about what they want you to do. Hopefully they're not watching this session. But that experience was just like really, it was eye-opening one because I learned a lot. This is a very good way to start off learning how to use it. I'm not going to go through all the code as I mentioned. The code is there on GitHub. I just want to show you that I have a view controller. Let me just back out of here so we can see here. I have view controllers, which is this guy here, all right? And the view controllers basically is just Apple's way of managing the life cycle of the page that is loading. And almost all of the methods inside here can be overridden, and it ties back into the service class. So I have a service class, which I will actually show you that piece. And again, as I say, I will be killing some of this later on because it does have my key and it has my URI. But basically, this service class that I have ties back to my Azure Mobile Services. And I create an instance of the mobile service client with it, and then I create my sync table so I can work locally on the tables, on the SQL Server table, SQLite table that is here. and I have my full CRUD capabilities. I have my sync, async, so I can sync both ways. I have my refresh data for when I make changes, my insert, my complete, which is part of the to-do item, and in this bit I have you where you can swipe to the left and say that you're done. And that's basically it. This is me extending what was there as I was learning it. The tweet bit, I downloaded the Twitter API to make that bit work. But like I said, code's already there. I'm not going to go too much into this. But the takeaway from here is that storyboard to make your design, view controllers for your pages, service class to interact with it. In a nutshell, that's how simple that is. All right? But once you've done that, let me see how I'm driving this session. Am I doing a demo now? Let me see. Yeah. In fact, let's go ahead and see how it works. All right, we'll take that opportunity to do it. So I am going to go ahead now, in the interest of time, and I'm going to. You guys are some of the guys were here before when I fired this up. The emulator, and I didn't know this. I've never presented it this far before. The emulator is very big on this screen, but it's not. But when you're in presentation mode. So, couple things here that I'll get into later. This view official rules, Apple rejected my application because I did not indemnify them because they qualified this as an entertainment contest app, and they wanted to say, I had to say that Apple is not responsible or a sponsor in this. They rejected me just for that. If you ever gone through the rejection cycle, they don't touch your code again for 1 more week. All right? So it took a month. That was one of the rejections. So I'm going to do this right here. I'm going to pull down for my refresh. All right, pull down for my refresh. This is the Twitter bit. And as you can see, it's pointing back to my service. And I am going to do something here, Fabian. And I have to do this a little bit. And come back over and do this here. So you see it authenticates me, it knows who I am. And these are all of the sessions that are here right now, okay? I'm going to come back over here so that you've seen that. I'm going to add a session. In fact, let's come over here into SQL Server real quickly and run this guy here. You can see there are only 8 items there, right? Let's come over here and add one. So we're going to do live stuff. LS101, speaker, Ted Patterson. And Twitter ID, @Ted Patterson, right? Critical path. All right. I'm going to do add event contest. Says it's added. I come over here, and I do run this guy again. And boom, we have this one down here, just like that, all right? So now I'm actually going to come over here and do the tweet for swag. So I'm going to click on this here and say, and the navigation on this could certainly be better, but like I said, this is just for this session. I'm going to say view all open contests. All right. Oops, go back. All right. Oh, come back. This is so big I can't work with it. All right. Where is it? It's down there, but I can't get to it. All right, but anyway, we'll do mine now. So we'll do building Azure Mobile Services. I'll do tweet for swag. It comes up here with my tweet. I'm going to say @Ted Patterson. Here he is. Sitting in. Session. I'm going to come up here now. Oh, come on. Post. And that tweet is now sent. So Ted will actually get a notification, and I just heard mine as well on my phone. So this is the tweet for swag stuff that is, like I say, in the App Store right now. And this took me around a month and a half to build. All right. So now that we've been there, let me jump back to my slides again. Start from current slide. So now that I've done this, here's what next. So once you've done this, you can use an application called Application Loader, which is what Xamarin recommends, or you can use iTunes Connect, which is a website that you can log into with your Apple account and upload your item. All right? Oops. Darn. All right. And upload your item. And this is some of the experience that I'm talking about. This is if I go into iTunes Connect and I look to see what's going on. But I'm going to show you the one that was more direct, or to my face. So the mobile application, this is the process I started with. I had this done in March 5th. On March 20th, it hit review. March 20th, rejected. I start working on it again, in review. Metadata rejected. Finally, April 8th, I got into the store. And most of the rejection is because of not having the right image size, not indemnifying. The metadata one is, metadata is indemnification in legal speak. And the first one was my binary was wrong. I was just getting used to it then. So getting the app done is a good first step, but it's not every step, all right? So actually, let's take a look at forms now. So that part right there is the Apple piece of it running in iOS, Xamarin.iOS. Xamarin.Forms, lovely. So whereas with forms, without forms, you have your shared backend, but you have to build your UI front end. With forms, you get shared UI. So the first bit gives you like around 80% code reuse, right? Whatever you build in C# ports over. And whatever you build in C# works for the platforms, fidelity all the way through. With forms, you get close to 99%. Even your UI will also work inside Xamarin.Forms and render specifically to the UI. I'm going to show you an example that I've built in Forms to prove that out for you. There's 40 plus pages, layouts, controls, and you can build it from C# or XAML. It provides for two-way data binding, great navigation, animation API, dependency services, and messaging center. So you get all of that inside Xamarin.Forms across all Windows, iOS, and Android devices, right? So just think about how quick you can get to production using a tool like this. So what I'm going to show you now is my tweet for Stack. I won't show you the mobile bit piece because that doesn't change. The mobile services piece doesn't change. I'm going to focus now on the Xamarin.Forms. So now that we've seen this, let's come over here and open up this guy. PDC Mobile, right? Yeah, exactly. Okay, so in this scenario, and there's something to talk about here as well. If you create a Xamarin.Forms application, solution in Visual Studio, it will create for you a shared project, which I'll get into later, in the next few minutes. It'll create a iOS, Android, and Windows solution, a project for you as well, right? If you create your Xamarin.Forms solution inside Xamarin Studio on the Mac side, it'll create everything but the Windows, because Xamarin Studio does not understand a Windows project because it can't write for it. So clearly you can tell here I did this from the Mac side. All right. What I wanted to spend some time on is shared project. There's two types of shared projects when you're working with Xamarin. There's portable class libraries, PCLs, and there is a shared project. There's reasons to use one over the other, but it all comes back down to how you want the deployment experience to be. With shared projects, you can use compiler directives with else if statements to have your shared project be pushed directly to each platform, compiled for each platform and pushed. With a PCL, it's one single that shares, basically like linking DLLs. So you're linking basically to your other projects. I prefer shared projects to use in my applications for this reason and this reason alone. When you're using PCLs, because it's linked, it needs to be full fidelity with all of the platforms that you're building. So when you start off with a PCL, it says, okay, what are you targeting? And you have a checkbox. So when you build that checkbox, it says, okay, you're compliant, boom, you're done. You can't go left or right after that. You're done. But and you have a subset of the .NET framework, because the subset is to what will be available across all platforms. With shared project, I can do whatever I want, and I can use I can bring in namespaces as I please, and I can use compiler directives to say, if Android do this, if iOS do that, if Windows does this. But I am bringing in more risk into my project because there's more work to do. I have to also now be more mindful of my platform, but it's still a shared project, but I use compiler directives to get around it. In this Xamarin.Forms project, and while I'm doing this, actually, that's fine, we're good. Again, I'm not going to go through much code, but let's start off with all of the projects. So we have an Android, we have an iOS, and iOS is my startup, and we have a shared project. Inside my shared project, we have this one that's called PDC Mobile. This is basically your app.cs, but in the latest version of Xamarin.Forms, it takes the name of your project. And as you can see, I'm using the directives, the compiler directives here to load a UI controller, because in Android, it's a little bit different because they're using activities than inside iOS for one specific thing. I needed, because I'm using Windows Azure Mobile Services, I needed to call a view to pop up on top of another view in code. It works on an iPad natively, but if you're working on a phone, you actually have to instantiate a controller earlier on. So I did some magic to make that happen. The code shows that magic, but by doing it, I had to create my controllers up in code inside my my app delegate and in my main activity inside Android. But basically, all I'm doing is pointing to my new home page and as a navigation page, and these are just different layouts that you can use inside inside the experience. How am I doing on time? 13 minutes, right? And inside here, I have my data services and my data objects. So again, this bit right here, my giveaway, again, looks just like my other stuff that you saw before. My tie into my my mobile services, my same calls to my local DB, almost the same code, right? Remember we talked about reuse, same code. In terms of my entities, these are just the entities these are my entity classes. Nothing strange there. And my helper utilities was what? Oh yeah. I wanted to, as I started to become better at iOS development, I didn't realize that even within one cell, you can actually divide cells up, right? I didn't know you could do stuff like that. Then I learned that you could do that. So I started to extend this app to have multiple information inside one cell to work with. So that's all that is. So I won't go into that because I said the code's already out there. And this bit right here, I'll just start off with the home page. This bit right here is just, you wire up basically, you make a decision as to how you want your layouts to be. Because I'm just learning this, I'm still new at it, I love stack layouts because it's just one on top of the other on top of the other, and you basically tell it what your children's are. It's the easiest to work with, and I found it easy. The rest of the stuff here is just stuff you can pick up on the internet, so I'm not going to go through it, but as I mentioned, the key difference here is that you're writing it in code. But if you're used to XAML, not a big deal. If you're Objective-C, this is not going to be a big deal for you as well. But there's just no beautiful UI to look to make things work. And as you are moving between, where is that? Like as you're moving between items, you have to create events, and inside those events, you create click handlers, and you basically are jumping on this. So you basically would do like calling out async to do objects, and then jumping from page to page. And that's probably about it there. So let me show you how this works. I wanted to show you this working in both Android and iOS, showing you the same code base. Oh, let me actually open this up a little bit. Inside here, let me just move this up. iOS. The only thing I did inside here is inside my app delegate, I had it to start up. I had to create a root controller so I can get the common consent pop-up, and I had to load my Windows Azure Mobile Services inside here to make that call. What else did I do? I think that's about it there, right? And that's the only modification I had to make in there, and that's just platform specific. So do the percentage, you figure out how much reuse that was. So I'm going to bring this here to I4S because it's smaller to work with. I'm going to show it to you both on the Windows side, the iOS side, and also on the Android side, the same code working. All right. So, sorry, I can't make this any smaller. First time it's kicking up, so it's a little bit slower. I don't have to do any sync on this. If you count to 15, it's going to start to load, or God willing, it starts to load. But it should start to come back. Well, there we go. All right. So this is where I have the cell. I have both the name and the date inside here. I click on this. Basically, I'm saying your tweet. This is an application I'm building for my company for a conference. But the idea here is, and you know what? You can't see. Oh, there it is, Windows Surface Pro 3. So this is, again, going into the database and pulling information out. And what I'm going to do here, if I click on this, it does the connection again. And I won't go too far into this, but I actually have, this is the one where I talked about where if I'm using my Microsoft credentials, it'll know it's me and give me more because obviously I'm the company sponsoring the event. And if I use another one, it gives me less. But I'm running out of time for that. The code is up there, so you can pull it down from there. But let me show it to you working inside, inside Android. And also, you should know that iOS uses a simulator, Android uses an emulator, and emulators take forever to start up. So I'm going to go here now to set a startup project. All right, and it's going to use my Fabian Nexus, and I'm going to say start. It's going to take a minute. So as this is coming up, questions, because we have like a really few minutes left, right? We end at, how many more minutes? Like 9 minutes, right? Oh no. Oh, no. Oh, no. Is that going to work? Can't give you that demo, sorry. Yeah, demo gods. And you know what? I went through all the session without the demo gods smiting me. Last day, smited. But it works. I have screenshots of it working. That's what it is. I spoke bad. I spoke bad about Apple. But we only have like 8 minutes, right? I'm correct, right? That's right. All right. So in this next 8 minutes, you guys were really, really quiet. Give me some questions before I start picking on people. Thank you guys very much. Enjoy the rest of your conference.